This is the Lie Detector Files, and today, we are answering the extraordinary question: was President John F. Kennedy assassinated by the U.S. government? Let's dive into this one. On November 22, 1963, President John F. Kennedy and his wife Jackie were riding in a motorcade through Texas when suddenly they heard a series of loud bangs. At first, they thought it might be fireworks, but soon realized that their president had been shot. President Kennedy was rushed to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. 2 days later, a man named Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested for the murder. But ever since that day, people have wondered whether there was more to the JFK assassination than met the eye. In this episode, we will examine several suspicious details about the case and uncover some shocking secrets that have been hidden from the public for decades. We will also interview an expert who believes that the assassination was actually an inside job, carried out by the CIA or another powerful organization. So make sure to watch until the end to find out what this expert has to say. The assassination of President Kennedy is one of the most controversial events in American history. And while the Warren Commission concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone, many people believe that there was a conspiracy involved. According to the official account, Oswald fired 3 shots from a rifle on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository, killing President Kennedy and injuring Governor John Connally. However, there are a number of inconsistencies in this story that have led to speculation that Oswald was not the only shooter. For example, some people believe that there was a second gunman on the grassy knoll in front of the motorcade. This theory is supported by eyewitness accounts that describe seeing a man on the knoll with a rifle or a pistol. Additionally, there is a famous photograph known as the Zapruder film that shows a man waving his arm in front of the motorcade just before the shots are fired. Some people believe that this man was the second gunman. However, the FBI has concluded that he was not involved in the assassination. Another piece of evidence that has fueled conspiracy theories is the fact that Oswald was able to escape from the Texas School Book Depository without being caught. He was only located and arrested hours later at a nearby theater. Some people believe that this was because Oswald had accomplices who helped him to escape, while others believe that he simply used a secret passageway in the building to get away. In addition to the physical evidence, there are also a number of suspicious circumstances surrounding the assassination. For example, there is no clear motive for why Oswald would want to kill President Kennedy. Oswald himself claimed that he had no political motivation and that he simply wanted to get rid of Kennedy because he was a dictator. However, this explanation does not make sense to many people who believe that Oswald must have been part of a larger conspiracy. One of the most popular conspiracy theories is that the assassination was an inside job, carried out by the CIA or another powerful organization. This theory is based on the belief that President Kennedy was planning to fire J. Edgar Hoover as director of the FBI. In 1963, relations between Kennedy and Hoover were deteriorating. Hoover had become increasingly frustrated with the president's policies and had even threatened to resign. It is believed that Kennedy's decision to remove Hoover from office could have been seen as a threat by some members of the establishment, leading them to believe that something had to be done to stop him. According to this theory, the assassination was carried out by a group of rogue CIA agents who were loyal to Hoover and did not want him to be replaced. These agents reportedly planted the evidence that pointed to Oswald as the assassin in order to cover up their own involvement in the crime. To further investigate this theory, we spoke to a former CIA agent who wished to remain anonymous. The following is a transcript of our interview with the former CIA agent. You say that the JFK assassination was an inside job. Can you elaborate on that? Well, it all comes down to motive. Why would someone want Kennedy dead? The official story is that it was a lone gunman, Lee Harvey Oswald, acting alone. But I don't buy it. I believe that there was a conspiracy involving high-ranking government officials. What evidence is there to support your theory? There is a lot of evidence pointing to a second shooter. There are eyewitness accounts, photos, and even a video that show a man with a rifle on the grassy knoll. The official story is that this man was not involved in the assassination, but I believe that he was. How do you think the assassination was carried out? I believe that there was a team of assassins working together. One of them was on the grassy knoll, and the other was in the Texas schoolbook depository. They both took shots at Kennedy, but the one on the grassy knoll missed. Why do you think the government is covering up the truth? Because they don't want people to know the extent to which the government is involved in conspiracies like this. They want to protect the reputation of the country and maintain the illusion that we live in a democracy. Are there any documents that could prove your theory? There are definitely some documents that could shed light on what really happened. For example, there are documents related to the investigation of the assassination that have been heavily redacted. And then there are the infamous CIA and FBI files that contain information on Lee Harvey Oswald and other potential suspects. These documents could provide valuable insight into who was behind the assassination and why. However, many of these files are still classified, and the government has been reluctant to release them to the public. But we did manage to get our hands on one such document. Take a look at this. It seems to be some kind of report on the assassination written by the CIA. However, it appears to have been tampered with. Some parts are scratched out and others are completely missing. What could this report be hiding? Let's try to piece together the missing information. According to the report, the assassination of President Kennedy was carried out by a lone gunman. This is consistent with the findings of the Warren Commission, which concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. However, the report also states that there are a number of unanswered questions surrounding the assassination. For example, it is still unclear how Oswald obtained the rifle he used to carry out the attack. Additionally, there are a number of witnesses who reported seeing a second gunman, but this is not mentioned in the report. It is possible that the CIA was trying to cover up the involvement of a second gunman by destroying or hiding certain evidence. After all, the CIA has been involved in numerous conspiracies over the years, and it is not beyond them to do whatever it takes to protect their own. We also found this interesting document in one of the archives. It appears to be a photograph of Lee Harvey Oswald's rifle, the very weapon that was used to kill President Kennedy. However, when we examined it closely, we noticed something strange. There seemed to be a second set of fingerprints on the rifle that did not belong to Oswald. Could this be the second shooter leaving his mark on the rifle? Or is there another explanation? These are just two of the many documents that could shed light on what really happened to President Kennedy. However, the government has been reluctant to release these documents to the public, leading many people to believe that there is something in them that they don't want us to see. As we continue to investigate the JFK assassination, we will keep searching for these hidden documents and uncovering the truth behind this dark chapter in American history. Now, let's talk about another controversial aspect of the JFK assassination: the famous autopsy photographs. These photographs were taken after President Kennedy was shot and show the extent of his injuries. However, they have never been released to the public, and many people believe that this is because they prove that there was a second shooter. According to the official account, President Kennedy was shot from behind and the bullet entered his back. However, when we take a closer look at the autopsy photos, we notice something strange. The entry wound in the back of President Kennedy's head does not look like it was caused by a bullet. Instead, it looks like it was caused by a blunt object. This could be explained if President Kennedy was shot from in front of him, which would suggest that there was a second shooter on the grassy knoll. Of course, the government has a different explanation for this. They claim that the wound was caused by the same bullet that killed President Kennedy. However, this is not supported by any physical evidence, and many people believe that the government is hiding the truth about the assassination. After hearing all of this evidence, you may be wondering what really happened to President Kennedy. Was he taken out by a lone gunman, or by the very government he was trying to change? The truth may be buried in classified documents and hidden from the public, but one thing is for sure: the JFK assassination was one of the most controversial events in American history, and it will continue to be debated for years to come. What do you think happened to JFK? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more episodes of Lie Detector Files. Thanks for watching.